Hello and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial we're gonna do this very easy stitch. The stitch is reversible. I think you can do a scarf, you can do like a placemat, you can do so many things, even a rug. So these are, when you work this stitch, we're gonna work it like this. So these are the sides. You can do a blanket. I think for a blanket it's really, well, depends on the size of the yarn. You might choose thicker. So this stitch is quite thick, you know. It's really nice. And it's one row repeat. That's it. And you have that like knitting look on the stitch. This stitch works with even numbers. For this stitch I will recommend that you use a bigger crochet hook than the yarn recommends. This yarn that I'm using, it says that I should use 5.0 millimeter crochet hook, but I'm working now with 7.0 millimeter crochet hook. You either go one number bigger or you go with two numbers bigger. Depends, because we're gonna work with a slip stitch, and with a slip stitch has a tendency to be really tight, you know. So you're gonna chain even numbers. I have here 14, I think. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna skip the first 3 chains from the hook, 1, 2, and 3, and into the 4th chain from the hook we're gonna do a slip stitch. Now you're gonna move to the next chain and you're gonna do the same, a slip stitch. So like I said, this stitch is worked only with slip stitch. In each chain we're gonna do slip stitch. It's a very easy stitch, might not eat so much yarn because it's the slip stitch. So if you want to do a thick blanket or even a vest, whatever you like to do, I think this one, it's, keep in mind this is thick. So if you don't want the ridges, for example, to be, because it's going to give you a look like a ridge, if you don't want them to be tight, then you're going to have to use a bigger crochet hook. So with this yarn I went 2 numbers bigger than the yarn recommends. Well, some of you don't like to use to work so much with the slip stitch, but if you like the knitting look, then you're gonna have to put up with that. So the last chain, it's here, we're gonna do the same. Into the last chain we're gonna do a slip stitch, and each time when you finish the row you're gonna chain 2. So 1 and 2, turn your work. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna work from this moment forward until you finish the work, whatever you choose to do with the stitch. We're gonna work through the back loop. So this is the front loop and these are the back loops. So we're gonna work only through the back loops. Now after you chain 2, you're gonna skip the first stitch here and into the second stitch through the back loop, and I will suggest you work loose. Yeah, we're gonna do slip stitch. Leave this one a little bit loose, because this loop is gonna make the next stitch, and if you work too tight, then this is gonna be a problem to go through. So you go to the next stitch through the back loop, gonna pull up a loop and then pass that loop through the loop on your hook, and we're gonna do like this. Move to the next stitch through the back loop, pull up a loop, and then pass this loop through this one, and that is the slip stitch. So this stitch is worked only through the back loop. You can alternate. If you get tired of just doing slip stitch, you can alternate 1 row of slip stitch in each back loop, and the next row you can do normal single crochet, and if you like that style, that will be okay. So the next stitches here, we're gonna go through the back loop I'm gonna do a slip stitch, and we have the chains that we skipped in the beginning, those 3 chains. So we're gonna go through the chain, the first one, and we're gonna do a slip stitch also. It's gonna be like this. Then you're gonna chain 2, turn your work, and again we're gonna skip the first stitch and into the next stitch through the back loop. That's why I said leave this one loose a little bit, because this is the stitch, it forms the stitch. So you skip the first stitch and into the second stitch from the hook. You're gonna go through the back loop, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop to the one on the hook, and we're gonna do like this through the back loop into the next stitch. You're gonna do a slip stitch. Again, leave this a little bit loose, but if you like this to be a little bit the ridges bigger or looser, then you're gonna have to work with a bigger crochet hook, maybe 3 numbers if you like, because if you work with the same crochet hook that the yarn recommends, then it's gonna be tight and dense. If you like a little bit looser, well, that's okay. So the last stitch is here. We're gonna go through the back loop, do a slip stitch, and now we have those 2 chains that we did at the end of the row, and we turn. What we're gonna do from this moment forward, you're gonna go through the top stitch chain there, through the top, the second one, and you're gonna do a slip stitch. You're gonna chain 2, turn your work, and you're gonna repeat. You skip the first stitch here and into the second stitch through the back loop. You're gonna do a slip stitch, and in each back loop, in each stitch, you're gonna do slip stitch. So the back loop. So this one should be a little bit loose. Maybe that's why some of you don't like to work with a slip stitch, because it gets tight and it's hard to get in. So use a bigger crochet hook. So the last stitch is here. We're gonna go through that slip stitch, and you have the chain 2. We're gonna go on top the second chain here, and you're gonna do a slip stitch, chain 2, and you're gonna repeat, and it looks like this. So you're gonna repeat, skip the first stitch and into the second through the back loop right there, and you're gonna do a slip stitch, and you're gonna continue, move to the next stitch, back loop, do a slip stitch. It's a very easy stitch, goes fast, and it's thick. Now if you like to do a blanket and you have a thick yarn, and I will suggest to use a bigger crochet hook than even that thick yarn recommends, because otherwise it's going to be really stiff. Now depends the texture of the yarn. If it's soft, maybe it's okay, but if it's a little bit rigid, it's going to be really stiff, the blanket. So the last stitch is here through the back loop, lap a loop, and then past that, and we have the chain 2 here. So we're gonna go on top of the second chain right there, and we're gonna do a slip stitch also. You're gonna chain 2, and you're gonna repeat. Looks like this. So you're gonna skip the first stitch and into the second. You have the loop. You kind of have to turn it like this. It's not in front here, it's here in the back loops. Yeah, so you're gonna skip the first one and into the second you do a slip stitch, and so on. This is a very easy stitch, especially for you guys, the beginners, if you want to practice the slip stitch. But always try to go with half number or 1 number or 2 numbers bigger the crochet hook when you work only with a slip stitch, or at least you have 1 row of slip stitch. Yeah. So we have the chain 2. We're gonna go on top of the second chain there and do a slip stitch, chain 2, and you're gonna repeat the row. So this is one side. So if you want to make with this a scarf, you're gonna chain to have this, you know, like knitting look. Then you're gonna have to chain as long as you like that scarf to be. You might chain 200 chains, depends on the thickness of the yarn. You might chain 160. So you're gonna do in each slip stitch. Yeah. So when you put the scarf on you, it's gonna be like this, if you like this style. It's very easy, goes really fast, and especially if you have a thick yarn, it's gonna be like this. So when we work the stitch, it looks like this with the V's horizontal. But if you are to make a long scarf and you put the scarf on you, it's gonna look like this. Yeah. Okay, well, this is the stitch. I hope you enjoy. Give it a try. You might find some projects to do with this stitch. Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. Have a good day.